favorite show to spend that much money at that time. The program got its start around 1948, 1949, and it ran for about 10 years. What people hear about today and what's been floating around the internet are the weekly shows, because they were recorded and then put on the air. They ran originally from 5 to 6 o'clock. They were 1 hour and then later cut back to a 15-minute show. But it's the Saturday morning show I'm going to talk about. That's the one I listened to the most, the one I recorded. And those tapes from the 1950 era are not in circulation. I could be wrong, but except for what I have, because I recorded them, they never recorded the show. It was done live, and therefore none of those tapes exist except for what anybody that might have been recording them on home tape recorders like I did. I was fortunate enough to meet with the writer of the program a few years ago, and I did a short interview with him, Don Kortekamp, and I've got a lot of clips of his that we're going to use during the next hour to kind of talk a little bit about the show. I gave a talk similar to this. I gave a talk on the show at the FOTR convention back in 2003. But there I spent more time, I think, talking about the development of the show and kind of behind the scenes of the show itself. Today I want to really get you to be more familiar with the show. Many of you are, but we're going to spend a little time with it. Okay, the teddy bear. A couple of things up here. A little housekeeping, maybe. We have a raffle, and we're giving away the teddy bear. Why the teddy bear? Maybe a dog, but I'm calling it a teddy bear. Because if you recall, the opening of the Saturday show was the teddy bear's picnic. So there's the tie-in. My wife thought it was clever to put the talk that I gave a few years ago inside the teddy bear's hand. So that's available for those of you that want to hear what I said 6 years ago. We have that at our table. We also have some of the radio shows at our table. That being said, let's get started with a couple of clips. What I'm going to start with, one of the things I guess that I liked about the show, and I guess many of us did, was the fact that the John Arthur, or John Gerst, did a show for children, but he didn't talk down to children. I think if you recall, he spoke to children like you'd speak to adults. He was also extremely friendly, because I sent him a couple of audio tapes. Back then I was really big on corresponding by tape with people, and I sent him 2 tapes and he responded to both of them. I'm going to play a little bit of the first tape. Actually, I used clips. Let's get over to this one. I'm not used to recording remotely, working there and looking back here. All right. So here's from the first clip.
Hello, Fred. This is Big John. The boys just played the tape you sent some time ago. I'm at the AEC studio on West 66th Street in New York, and I'm recording this on the afternoon of Friday, June 17th. In the control room are Bill Tague, the ABC engineer who works on the No School Today show, and our producer, Will Mahoney Jr. And it seems to me you might have met Will when we were in Miami a couple of years ago. Didn't I meet you up at the studios of WQAM? We were in there for an interview at one time, and I remember talking to a boy who told me he had gobs and gobs of the Captain Jupiter stuff on tape. But if you're the same one, I believe your voice has changed. Of course, that's been a couple of years, and voices do change between 13 and 16, don't they? Bill, how long ago did this tape come in? Has this been around the house for several weeks now? As a matter of fact, I'm reminded that we have at our house up in Stamford, Connecticut, 5 or 6 tapes that have come in the mail for various purposes during the past couple months that I haven't listened to, simply because we don't have our recording equipment hooked up at home. The only tape machine that we're using right now is a Magnacord. What is that, a PT6? And we keep that at the ABC studios. At home we have an Ampex 300 and an Ampex 400, but neither of those machines are hooked up. The one we use on personal appearances is the portable Ampex. But we don't have a speaker system, so therefore we've never had any occasion to listen to any of the tapes that we had. But it was a real surprise hearing from you. And I remember now that I got a picture, an 8.5 or an 8 by 10 glossy photograph of your little pixie. Do you remember that, Bill? Yeah, we remember that very well. Say, where in the world do you get all the money for the tape that you were saving this stuff on? And I recall where you asked if we knew any place where you could get a buy-in bulk tape, and how many more chapters of Captain Jupiter were we going to have? Well, all I can say to that is, if you can get a buy on some bulk tape, you better buy, because I imagine Captain Jupiter is going to go for another 4 years anyway. We just signed an additional 4-year contract with ABC.
When we listened to the program, I guess many of us thought that there were more than just one person. They didn't realize that Sparky was actually Big John, was John Arthur, and that also all of the other voices that were on the program were his. Somebody calculated he did between 150 and 200 voices, which is actually amazing. How did it all begin? Well, again, I thought that the program, again, as a kid, you don't think about who writes these things, and I always thought it was all done by one person. But actually, Don Cordekamp met John Arthur in the studios of WSAI, and here he explained a little bit about how they met. Let's see.
I went to work for WSAI again, and that's when I got acquainted with John Arthur. John and I got along pretty well. I didn't know who he was or what he was at the time, except that he was a disc jockey. But eventually, we displayed our humor, and it seems like we both had the same style of humor. And he was amazed that I could come up with things that he intended to do anyway. So, well, we got along pretty well. John eventually got into the disc jockey show, having what you would call a little brat named Sparky. And Sparky was a brat back then. And the station manager told John, wouldn't it be better if you had Sparky be a good little guy and do good things? And John sort of liked that idea. So Sparky became a good guy. And that's where the adventures of Big John and Sparky started, although he didn't have a show about the program having any kind of a continuity or anything like that. So he asked me if I could write something that would play into a show that could be continued from day to day, from week to week, and so on. And that's when I came up with the idea for Big John and Sparky show.
I think what we'll do now is listen to a little bit of that show. Actually, I'll give you a little, if you recall the opening, actually I'm going to do a little surprise here. In going through my tapes a couple of nights ago, up until this point, I never found an actual opening of the show. What I used to record was the Captain Jupiter serial. So at the very opening, Sparky would come on and say, "Hi, boys and girls, come on, let's get the show, on with the show." And then he would sing the opening song. And I never taped that because it took up too much time on the tape, and I was trying to record all these chapters of Captain Jupiter. Well, 2 nights ago, I discovered I had something marked Big John and Sparky or No School Today, opening only. So I played it, and it's the opening of the show. This may be the only recording that exists of that opening. So